Hello. Today we continue the 12 truths of a spiritual path. We're going to be talking about the fourth truth, which is the truth of intuition. So the first thing I'd like for you to do is set a timer for 15 minutes from now. We're going to be doing an activity called Milk the Moment. This is an activity that you can find in my 7 Gates book. Milk the Moment refers to any moment when you sort of connect to it, which we'll do with the timer. What you're saying, thinking, or hearing at that exact moment is guidance. So it's a really good way to start connecting with your intuition. The law that I want to focus on today is called the Principle of Vibration. And the law says nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. So we're going to be talking about vibration, how to manage vibration, how to actually design a vibration to attract something that you want to attract. So all connections are vibrational connections linked to your level of consciousness. The reality is that you're not that picky. It's your consciousness that's picking every situation. What you attract is linked to your impurest thought that is trying to get released through your intuition. So your messages and your guidance are only as good as your impurest thought. People oftentimes ask me when I teach them the Akashic Records, how do I know if it's me, my thinking, or my guidance? And they're linked because the higher your vibration is and the purer your thoughts, and reflected, the truth of thoughts, having looked at them and what they are and own them, will make way for your intuition to get clearer and clearer. Keeps you in child, your level of consciousness and your impure thoughts, and victim. And then what happens is you continuously flip-flop from instinct to intellect, and you'll see that in the myth today. The vibration at a low level consciousness is all about quantity, not quality. Quantity does not have to only mean material, but also emotional gluttony. So I have this picture here. It has no face. And I had a client a few weeks back. We've been trying to work on her dating situation. And I used this law and I said, you're not that picky. In her case, what she wanted was a man that had as much wealth as she did, that can travel in first class whenever she wanted. And she laughed and she says, yes, you're right. And the reality is that that's all of us. We have a vibration, we have an impure thought, we're vibrating at that low level consciousness, and that's what we're attracting. The thing is that we can manipulate and maneuver this to our sort of benefit if we know how to use the law. So that's what I want to teach you today. So I use this thing with clients, or I say, if I birthed a baby and I gave you a ball of energy, what would you say? Here's your baby, a ball of energy. The logical question would be, where's the body? And the thing is that as humans, we are so in association with the form, the material. The body is not the baby. The baby is the vibration of that energy ball. So when that baby is conceived, it's identifying you and your partner's vibration and decides to enter that womb by that vibration. When we meet a partner, we're vibrating and that person vibrates at our same level, and that's what we call attraction. This has nothing to do with their hair, their face, their pocketbook, their intellect. It is all vibration. The thing is, we're so enamored by the world of form and illusion that we get caught up in those things, and it really isn't anything that we want. We'll do an activity in a little while. So if you really understand what vibration you're seeking in a job, in a partner, in a car, in any situation, you can actually attract that vibration by working with the elements. So we have to get past a little bit of the world of form so we can actually get to sort of our vibration and really attract what it is that we want. So the myth I want to share with you today is Hercules and the Ceryneian Doe. So Hercules was told that he has to capture the doe. Artemis wants the doe and Apollo wants the doe. Artemis rules the moon And Apollo rules the sun. The moon is the emotion, and the sun is the intellect. We've seen in the last three truths that the emotion, the thoughts, the intellect is part of sort of the development process that takes us to this truth, which is mass consciousness, and raising our vibration from mass consciousness. And that's what he's doing. He is told to take the dough, not let Artemis, the emotions, or Apollo, the intellect, get the dough, but rather he is to capture the dough, not kill it, carry it on his heart. This is part of the instructions, and take it to the temple at Mycenae. And that's his job. This entire myth is about looking at instinct from the moon that keeps us in that reptilian brain, the limbic system, the fight or flight, and limbic system child mode of fight or flight and an emotional response. Getting out of that, getting past the intellect. The intellect is very important in our spiritual growth because it gets us out of child, it gets us to teenager. It teaches us to pause, take the breath, get out of sort of the emotional response, make a free will choice, and then move into intuition, which is sort of how we want to live in the world. I say that I'm earthly Francis and I'm spiritual Francis. I'm always in the flow of the Akashic records because I'm balanced in the spirit and the matter. So as you start cleaning the emotions, the desires, the impure thoughts, you pull all of that sort of mass consciousness, low vibration away. You live from the heart space with your intuition, and then you're constantly in connection with your guidance. So there isn't a distinction between your earthly self and your spiritual self, but rather they're balanced and living in unison. So what he's doing by taking the dough away from both Artemis and Apollo is he's liberating the mass consciousness, which is the instinct, and the intellect, which is ruled by the sun and the moon. And it's the intuition that allows us to connect to our highest self. He creates the space to seek spirituality and deeper truths. And I'm going to talk about a negative feedback loop that actually needs to get disrupted in order to raise consciousness. In physical homeostasis in the body, we actually are helped by homeostasis. Psychological homeostasis actually hurts us because it's linked to staying in fight or flight, in child, seeking our needs met, and so forth. And we need a disruptor or a perpetrator in order to raise consciousness, which is the indication of the fourth house that's ruled by Cancer, that's this myth, and moving into Leo and owning our solar energy, which then leads to our intuition. So this is Praesepe. This is what's called a beehive cluster in the constellation of Cancer. Every human being is born through the quote unquote symbolic tropic of Cancer. That's why Jesus was born in a manger. Manger is Praesepe in Latin, so it wasn't a real manger. The animals represent the animal consciousness, the low level consciousness that all of us are born into at the moment of conception. You didn't attract your parents or pick your parents based on the size of their house or the color of their hair. You pick them based on a vibration solely. In the first four houses of the zodiac, you're given the beginning, and these are called the individual houses. In the first house, you're given your body, your personality that becomes later on part of the mass that needs to be removed. In the second house, your value system. Again, when you do it differently from your parents, you're really just shifting a bit of your value system. But you have to know what your value system was that inherited so you know how to raise consciousness. The third house has to do with your siblings and your thought. And your fourth house has to do with the mass consciousness. So the consciousness level. Those four things are going to follow you throughout the rest of the zodiac every time it goes around and your entire lifetime. So Bert Hellinger, the father of family constellation, said, your parents gave you life and that was enough. So when the doctor hands you over your vibration, your energy body, and you ask, where's the body? You're associating mass consciousness with earth and form and illusion. But if you can pull that back and sort of clean that up, then you can move into the 5th house of Leo, which starts your personal sector, your individuation process, what I call your spiritual STD process. So I want you to think about this beehive. Think of a honey pot. So I think of honey and I take an apple. Think of the apple as your soul. And your soul is dipped in the honey. Now take the apple out and try to separate your hand and the honey all from the apple. It's practically impossible. So that's the symbolism of trying to move from the 4th house to the 5th house, from the lunar emotional energy that's wrapped in the honey, which is energy of emotions, low vibration consciousness, impure thoughts, desires. And you're trying to individuate, which is sort of like your call, as Joseph Campbell would say, the individuation process. And you're unable to do that because you can't get away from the stickiness of the beehive, of the honey pot. So I have a thing called sticky note spirituality. People that engage in sticky note spirituality stay in low vibration consciousness in the guise of spirituality with crystals and pendulums and incense. And those are all great tools. I use all of them, but that isn't spirituality. Spirituality is a very hard process that you engage in your entire life with self-analysis, self-awareness about your impure thoughts, about your desires, about your emotions, about your lower consciousness, raising consciousness, dethroning parents, doing it differently. It is not about even talking to your spirit guides. That's only step 4 of a 12-step process. So the way that we're sort of being sold in the new age, this sticky note spirituality, is actually very detrimental. This is hard work. The mass consciousness in the 4th, which is that honey pot with the apple, when you go into the 5th house, and you'll see that in the next video, which is the truth of personality, you're trying to remove the thoughts, the emotions, and the desires so that apple, which represents your soul, can actually shine like a diamond, which is then directed will and your purpose. That's the individuation process. That's the spiritual STD. You cannot do that if you're stuck in the family, low-level consciousness, covered in honey, haven't looked at your thoughts, your desires, and your emotions. There's no spirituality as such. Again, you have to raise vibration to leave the manger. Like my guidance says, to achieve Christ consciousness, you need to leave the manger. Christ consciousness isn't until the truth 10, the truth of silence, but this is the first sort of step. So take it away from Artemis, take it away from Apollo in the 5th, and then you can start raising your intellect as a result. Again, this is linked to quantity, not quality. Low-level consciousness, mass consciousness is linked to the moon, is linked to low vibration, is linked to the family, is linked to the constellation of Cancer. It's memories, it's traditions, it's all of the past. So this is a chart on psychological homeostasis. So here's the instinct ruled by Moon and Mars. Again, we go into sort of the vicious cycle of the fight or flight response with Mars, linked to an unmet need by the Moon. We're triggered as a child and we're trying to get our needs met. If we manage to take a breath and get out of sort of that limbic system fight or flight response over here, we end up with the intellect. This is Apollo. We take a breath and we realize in the teenager that we can actually breathe and say, okay, I have a choice. You get to choose. You want to go back into child or you want to go into adult or spiritual adult. This is the moment. Sort of that in between the inhale and the exhale, we take a breath. From there, we connect to our intuition, and that's only through the heart chakra. That's why Hercules had to put the doe on his heart chakra and take it to the temple, symbolic of the intuition, symbolic of the spirit connecting to the matter. So this is Hercules at the temple, the doe is at the heart, you're out of child, and you're attempting here to leave the manger. It's with your intuition that you see your purpose, you see your divine will, you see your direction, that you try to leave that low-level consciousness and move into the 5th house to identify what your soul is and your soul purpose. So here are the toxic waters. This is where the problem lies. We continuously go back into the toxic waters, seeking mom, seeking the womb, seeking a victim and a rescuer. This was the whole problem with the age of Pisces. We're now moving into the age of Aquarius with COVID as its onset. And we're going to topple this idea that there's a savior or a rescuer outside of self. And we're actually going to return home to ourselves in the age of Aquarius. Aquarius is symbolic of the heavens, of the universal womb, the universal consciousness, so that we can hopefully bypass this false womb and this false symbiosis, that our needs are met in the womb. This really keeps us confused. This is when people say, how do I know the difference between my thoughts and my intuition? And it's all about the inner work you do. The clearer your thoughts, the less impure, or at least the self-analysis around the obsession of the thoughts, will then get you out of these toxic waters. Remember, toxic waters relate to the womb, child, your needs being met by someone else, and it's linked to your poor coping style, drinking, smoking, gambling, eating, whatever it is. So we don't usually shatter the snow globe of our toxic waters. We kind of just go back and forth into this process, and it's a vicious cycle. So we need a perpetrator in the system. And here is Pluto. Pluto shocks the system, kind of like in the law of octaves that provides those shocks. That shock is provided by Pluto. Pluto is a perpetrator because in the myth of Persephone and Demeter, he rapes her. Anything that you have no closure with, that has a sudden ending, a death, widow, a car accident, you lose something, you lose custody, you lose your house, anything that's half is linked to Pluto. Many years ago, and I'm probably aging myself, Eddie Murphy had a stand-up series called Raw. And it was a joke that he had married some woman, I think from Africa, and she had learned one word in the United States, half, because back then women would get half of everything that the man had. That's Pluto. He basically says, give me half. So if you have those sort of themes in your life, they're very Plutonic. So for instance, I had lost custody, but I had my kids 50% of the time. That is a Pluto perpetrator that comes in to make me try and change. We do not get endings. We do not get closure. The nonsense around wanting to stay friends after relationship, after things end, is nonsense because it's just linked to the moon, to emotional gluttony. So there isn't virtue in wanting to stay friends or not wanting to end something or end on good terms or have closure. No, you need a perpetrator. It came, you created that so that you could just move on and transition into your next life. So if you have a question and you want to know why and what you don't like about the perpetrator to tell you about your shadow, simply ask, what don't I like about this situation, person, place, thing, or situation? And that's going to be your intuition. This helps to release your impurest thought. There's an onset of crisis. There could be death. There could be grief. There's a realization, I hope, for you that leads to yourself and what I call a spiritual STD. Say, think, and do. When you start saying, thinking, and doing all in unison, then you're actually in self-love. You're out of the manger, out of all that honey, and you start the individuation process. So oftentimes we call this disease, or we get a disease as a result. In Ayurveda, there's a 6-stage theory of disease, and the Western world only diagnoses of the 6 stages at the 5th and the 6th, when it's already destroyed you, when it's already a full-blown diagnosis. In Ayurveda, the first disturbance, that first accumulation or aggravation, is when you want to get treatment. So in psychological homeostasis, this is when we sense a slight disturbance of emotion, a slight disturbance of an impure thought. If we actually worked it, we can probably eliminate full-blown illnesses like the 5-year cancer bout that I had. So if we actually utilize the perpetrator, it can lead us to our soul. It can lead us to our divine purpose, what I call the spiritual STD. What happens is that most of us, after the 2-year stretch of grief, of widow, of divorce, of loss, we end up right back here. The psychological homeostasis does not help us. It takes a perpetrator, and even then, if we don't get to the spiritual STD, process the emotions fully into to feelings with Chiron, get to Lilith to remove the masks, we never get back into the heart, which is ultimately the goal, to have high intuition, honor the divine feminine, and love thy neighbor and be compassionate and a world servant in the age of Aquarius. Most often, people after the perpetrator, they just go right back into their process. It's very disruptive. Another thing that happens is, so here I have indicator, the perpetrator, and it's like right back into the instinct and the intellect. So I invite you to look at your moon sign and love. If you want to be loved like a child, you're going to love and receive love via that moon sign. That is automatically going to take you out of perpetrator and spiritual STD and put you right back in. When we leave the perpetrator and we're actually doing our inner work as a spiritual STD, we actually go into intuition, healthy intuition, and we understand that we want to be loved like an adult. This bypasses the moon and the toxic waters of the womb. There you see in Venus how you want to be loved and how you should love others. So it's probably 15 minutes. When your timer goes off, what was I saying? What were you thinking? What were you hearing at that moment? That's your guidance. That's the milk the moment activity. So you can do this at any time. I recommend clients set it at 2 o'clock. They forget about it. Every day at 2 o'clock, it sets off and they're like, oh, I just got guidance. Another activity I have for connecting to your intuition is what I call Mr. Potato Headed. So sometimes what happens is I will be listening to someone. I use the law of correspondence a lot, which is what's happening outside is a reflection of what's in, because everything's always a vibration. And I'll hear a few words and I'm not exactly sure what they are. So I put them on a piece of paper in my notepad and I wait. And maybe a couple days later, I get another piece of the puzzle. And then the 3rd or 4th days later, I get other pieces of the puzzle. And then I put it together like a Mr. Potato Head doll. And then I see the answer of the guidance. So you may not know right off the bat, but maybe within a few situations or a few days, you get the answer. So for instance, write down 1 or 2 words for each situation that you didn't like. And I say didn't like because it's most often that we're finding things out about ourselves to clear out that impure thought when it's a person, place, thing, or situation that we don't like. So if it's positive, it's a little different, but this is really where we're working at to clear out that apple and that diamond and really get you into the individuation process with Truth 5. So write word or 2 down that you didn't like about person, place, thing, or situation. After several situations, you're going to connect them together. So I didn't like that he was lazy. I judged someone. He was mean, another judgment. He borrowed money. It doesn't go with my value system and is always late. So now there is an impure thought, a thief, as I call them, that steal your peace of mind. They're often called the deadly sins or the vices that are linked here to an impure thought, to a desire that we haven't come clean about ourselves and is perpetrating our peace. Then I ask, where does it relate back to you? Where perhaps are you lazy, mean, borrow money, and always late? Now I have to preface that the language of the universe is myth, metaphor, symbol, archetype. So it's not necessarily that you borrow money, but money is symbolic of earth, of the earthly realm, of the material. So maybe you value more about the material than the spiritual, for instance, and that's the link there. So you do have to sort of work with vibration and myth and metaphor and symbol and elements to kind of understand, but you'll start seeing your intuition unfold when you Mr. Potato Head it. Also, what are you saying to your inner child? Am I saying that my inner child's lazy, mean, and worthless? Money is a value of worth. It's linked to worth. Time, money, and resources, and how we spend them is always linked to our self-worth. So maybe we're saying we're procrastinator, we're always late. Maybe we're saying we're lazy. Maybe we're saying that we don't, pay our own bills our own way, and we're relying on someone else. So thread it together like Mr. Potato Head and bring it back to you and see what you're saying to your inner child. Always it is linked back to your parents and your childhood. Remember, the first 4 houses of the zodiac are directly linked to values, to thoughts, low-level consciousness, and our body. So, and our personality. So it's always going to be linked back to that. So you could go back and do the buckets. You can ask what you don't like about this, where you see this in your parents, that you have it yourself. So I have many tools on my website to help you kind of get there. How do these thoughts keep you in the mass consciousness, in the manger? Do these thoughts relate to that honey, to that apple loaded with like that honey and that junk that you're trying to step away from? So you can connect that to the law of vibration. It all goes back to thoughts. Everything that you have as intuition, so when you milked the moment a few minutes ago, it's only as clear as the awareness about your thoughts. You have to keep going back to that. So I have an activity so that you can start vibrating and attracting things at the vibration without getting in your own way. Many clients will tell me one thing, but then when we do this activity, they realize that what they want is another. And we have to get very clear. I have a saying that's, I like thin crust. It was a student many years ago. I gave an activity and she's like, I like thin crust, indicating thick crust. And I said, so that's an incongruence. You're saying one thing and you're doing another. So this activity is to get you very clear so that you could vibrate and attract what you want. So first, I want you to write down. So let's say it's a partner, a job, a car, does not matter. Remember, it's all energy, it's all vibration. The material is form and it's an illusion. We're going to step that aside. The energy of your relationship, the energy of the home you want, the energy of the dog, the energy of your partner, your car, whatever. What do you want? Describe that in measurable, definable terms. So for instance, I had a client the other day and she was describing the man of her dreams. And she's like, I want him to be loyal and I want him to be a good dancer and I want him to travel and all of this vibration. Fine, that was what she chose. Then we did part 2 of the elements, right? The part 2, which is in a moment, we'll do the elements. So for instance, you're going to get 10 elements. Fire, air, earth, and water. You're going to now, once you define the characteristics, you're now going to put that as an elemental structure. So if you could design this person in air, earth, fire, and water, linked to that vibration, what would it look like? Most of the times, these things look different. We're saying we want this. She wants a loyal, passionate dancer. And I'll explain the incongruence in a moment, but her elemental structure was all off. So I've had this several times and it's really interesting. And then you'll see your incongruence. And then you can go back and rewrite your vibration and or your elemental structure so that you are now vibrating at exactly what you want. And you're not going to get enamored with the illusion. If you have a person on paper that you want that's spiritual, that has integrity, that's honest, and all of your qualities don't relate, all of your elements don't relate to those qualities, then there's an incongruence and you're not going to bring the person. So once you see it, you can fix it. However, let's say you state all of these wonderful qualities, but really in your subconscious, what you want is a rich guy, and you have very little for earth, which is the energy or the element of money, then you're going to get enamored or you're going to get disenchanted, let's say, with the form because you've attracted something you don't want. Or another situation is, let's say you want to attract someone who's wealthy and you put a lot in your earth element column and then he shows up and he doesn't look the way you want him. Again, you're getting enamored with the form and the illusion and it doesn't align with what you stated you wanted. So we've got to get away from the form. It's hard. Obviously, we're all image-based. We live in an image-based society. But in order to vibrate and attract what we want at the elemental level, We've got to push that away. So many of my clients get in their own way. So many will have the perfect person or the perfect job in front of them, and they're focused on something that's not even a value, that's not even on their vibration, that's not their elemental structure, and they throw it away all because of what it looks. So we really have to reconcile this incongruence that everything is vibration. And if you're going by the mass consciousness and the illusion of what it is, the body of the baby, you've missed the point. So next is the activity. So for instance, describe the vibration. So here's an example of a partner. Loyalty is earth, smart is air, kind is water, family-oriented is water, honest is earth, likes to travel is fire, communicator is air, organized is earth, wealthy is earth, spiritual water. So there's 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And here's the breakdown. If this is not the structure you want, you need to redefine your vibration and redefine your elements. Everything in the world is vibration. And then from that vibration in the universe, that consciousness, the elements are formed. You can see this in your astrology chart. You can find out how many planets in air, earth, fire, and water you have, and you can see your vibration then. Now, let me specify. You can be at a low vibration of water, for instance, Pisces. The lowest vibration is a piranha, and you can go all the way up to, let's say, dolphin. So you can see the fisherman actually for Pisces. The lowest vibration is piranha, and the highest vibration is a fisherman. Big difference in the water vibration, but that's another layer as we start raising our consciousness. But in level 4, truth 4 of intuition, this is super important. So I had a client this week, and she does this, and I told you she wanted someone loyal, she wanted someone who dances, who travels, a lot of fire qualities. Most of her elemental structure was fire, and I said fire isn't loyal. Fire qualities are not loyal, and her first husband had been unfaithful. He had all those other qualities. So she kept saying her value statement, and her value system was linked to loyalty, but really every time she attracted someone or defined it, it was blowing up in her face. It wasn't what she really wanted. So this takes you back to your values. In truth 2, linked to your desires, your judgments. You have to get very, very clear, because you are attracting and you are vibrating at this level. So if that's not what you want, then you have to rearrange it. So I had a client today who did a similar activity in search of a partner, and she mentioned all this earth energy, but when she actually went to define her elemental structure, she was heavy in the fire and the water. And so I said, fire puts out water, water heats up fire. Of all her qualities, the only thing she had was passion with that elemental structure of fire and water. So we really need to get very clear. One thing that I find useful is to look up, and these are the gunas here. There are 20 gunas. Gunas are qualities. This comes from Ayurveda. It's usually related to like the doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and the body and so forth. But it also has to do with the mind, has to do with the creation of the universe. So if you use the 20 gunas to describe your vibration, that will help you to define your elemental structure. So this is the 4th truth of intuition. Thank you very much, and have a great day.